Welcome to Love Lattes, the podcast designed for women who are ready to stop settling and start living a life full of authentic love, confidence, and real connection. I'm your host, Victoria, the self-love scientist, speaker, and coach, and I'm here to help you reclaim your power, deepen your relationships, and fall unapologetically in love with yourself. So grab your tea, your latte, or your favorite beverage, and let's get started.
Okay, are you in the middle of some kind of life transition and wondering how to move through it? Why does it feel overwhelming? Does it feel overstimulating? You got to have all your shit together. How would you feel if you could move through this with more purpose, with more grace, and a lot more trust within yourself? Then this is the episode for you. Welcome to the Love Lattes podcast. I'm Victoria, the self-love scientist here, and I am joined by the radiant Amy DeGrossa. Amy is a transpersonal life coach, hypnotherapist, educator, Reiki master, and all-around soulful guide. Amy helps people tap into their own inner wisdom, navigate major life transitions, and live more intentionally from the heart. Welcome to the podcast, Amy. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you for having me. I also am very excited to be here.
Amazing. So, Amy, when I kicked off this episode, and even in our mini little podcast interview process, we talked about what these transitions look like. And I'd love for you to kind of share with our audience, like, what particular life transitions do you help with?
That's a great question because there are many transitions that we go through in life, whether it is moving from one place to another, transitioning within a relationship from one stage or state to another, maybe going from single to being married or married to separated or to divorced or widowed. Also career changes, there are transitions. Life is full of transitional stages and phases. And it's near and dear to my heart. I have had a lot of change in my life from a very young age. I moved around. I think we lived in 9 different cities by the time I was about 10 years old. So there was a lot of change that initiated my life. And as a result, I have within me this constant yearning and desire to find peace within the places and spaces of transformation. What I've come to learn as an adult is that these are actually gateways for transformation, gateways for growth. So there's for me, it sort of equates to transformation, equates to change, and change equates for the most part, to a constant flow of energy and following purpose, but also following my heart and finding the places and spaces where I feel my most authentic self.
I love the way you said that. And you actually left it on a very, very interesting note when you used your heart to navigate through these transitions. And I think as human beings, and also personally speaking, I don't think we allow ourselves these spaces. Like sometimes we find ourselves in the middle of a transition, whether it was, pre-planned or an abrupt, and it's like, now I got to get my life together and just kind of, wing it, or maybe you're a better planner than I am, but I do think if we were a little more intentional and allowed ourselves that capacity and space to ask, directly from the heart, then I think we would be able to move into those spaces, as you said.
Most definitely. I think being able to be with the most authentic parts of ourselves, what I have learned, or the place that I have arrived at this sensation or knowing is really through a lot of self-reflection. Meditation has helped me tremendously to drop into my heart when I'm seeking answers. Mindfulness practices, journaling, music, nature, walking. I have a lot of different ways in which I have learned how to calm myself when maybe triggered, or whether I'm going through an experience that I don't understand that requires a different pace, um, a different awareness, if you will. So I think the other thing that I'm very aware of that taps into this is that I I believe that we heal in community. And what I mean by that is that it's really important to resource ourselves by connecting with other people. And I think heart connections can be very powerful that way. In a sense, being able to trust ourselves and then being able to find others with whom we can share and open our hearts to, right? So that we can be vulnerable, because it's in those vulnerable moments where we get to really express our deepest desires and our most authentic selves.
So it's definitely, we're definitely getting that message out there that it is important to move and have this outsource come, like this, not the outsource, but the insource come directly from the heart. Why is it so important for us to be like to utilize that part of us when it comes to navigating transition or change?
That's a really beautiful question. You know, I think oftentimes we are wired to be very cerebral, very intellectual, very, oh, I got to figure this out beings through an ego state. And that is a big part of who we are. Our ego is part of who we are. Our personalities are another part, and our spiritual aspect is another part. So we have all these different components and ways in which we're having these experiences. And it's really a choice of what we choose to focus on, and where we focus our attention is perhaps what I have found where the answers lie. And so, in discovering more about myself, going through life and experiences and transitions, and stilling the racing thoughts or the intellectualizing of things, and maybe bringing in a more calming aspect to it, allows me to really distill what feels true to me. Whereas if there's a lot of noise and a lot of things coming at me from outside of me, and if I'm seeking a lot of answers outside instead of allowing myself the stillness to seek them from the inner source of my own being, I get very distracted and it can be very confusing. So I think there's a gift in being able to quiet the mind and really just be still. And that can happen for different people in different ways.
I love the way you said that. I think coming from like a personal experience of being an avid people pleaser for so long and literally seeking that validation, especially not knowing what, how I could experience love for myself in that way, but looking for it in the wrong reasons, and finally having that capability to be like, let me close that out. Let me sit in my feelings and navigate from there. In it, with the folks that you're helping with, like in these navigating like these life transitions, what is a pretty common theme you hear, or what do you think is like, what is probably a common obstacle that they're coming across?
Mm, that's also a really good question. You know, each person very uniquely has, their own perceptions or as challenges, I guess, that they're facing. I would say that relationships are probably the place where I see that happening the most. People learning how to navigate the outward relationships with others, and how to make sense of the transitions that they might be going through, particularly if it's somebody who is already maybe separated from a partner and is navigating a new relationship, for example. Or, it's important and key to be able to understand ourselves, because our personality and our traits, we have strengths and we have weaknesses, we have ways of navigating things. And if we can focus on discovering what those strengths are, this is my mission, is to help folks be able to identify what their strengths are so that they can lead and make decisions based on that, and integrate from a place of wisdom rather than react from a place of maybe fear, for example, you know. So oftentimes we have a whole bunch of experiences in life that inform us and guide us to make choices in certain ways and have belief systems that could turn out to be no longer true for us. We may be operating from a set of limiting beliefs. For example, something like I'm not good enough, that, may have been embedded or implanted in us when we were very young. And for whatever reason, we continue to believe that. And if we don't question that, if we don't really look at where is this coming from and do I really believe that? Or is there something that I can change about myself? And am I willing to look at, well, what if that's not true? Being curious, being open, to the possibility that I might be able to navigate things in a different way than I'm accustomed to or habituated to, and move in a different direction. So empowering other people to really look within themselves to see what guides them to make decisions, especially through transition moments. And are they allowing themselves to be guided by their own inner strengths, or are they using a whole bunch of mental constructs from the past that maybe they've outgrown, that maybe they don't serve the process any longer of growing?
Yeah. Yeah, that as soon as you said that, I was like, yep, I can relate. When I knew, I can tell when I do a lot of reflection when I was acting and making decisions based on like what was normalized for me from my experiences and like lifestyle and relationships compared to now as I navigate. I'm like, that's not really lined up with my values. And if I trust that, then I know that I can create a beautiful experience with that.
Yes, absolutely. And when you know yourself, when you get to know yourself in the light of acceptance, in the light of love, in the light of truth, when you can really take a hard look at, when we can take a hard look at ourselves, right? I include myself in this absolutely 100%. I've had to do this myself. And, you begin to see that there's a gamut, right? That there's a spectrum of ways in which our belief systems work, our ego constructs are built, and the way that we operate in the world. And, we can be extremely, let's see, a character strength. You mentioned like people pleasing. So there is when we hear that, we tend to think of that it has maybe, I don't know if negative is the right word, but sort of like a weaker feeling to it, because it feels like we're doing something to give away our power, right? And when we understand that that might be part of what's happening, it's also worth looking at, why is that? How did that serve? Because in some way, along the path, we learn to adapt, we learn to adjust. And when we were younger, it may have served us in a way, in a positive way, but it doesn't mean that it serves us any longer. And so compromising ourselves, doing things over and over without really understanding, why do these experiences keep showing up in my life, where I find myself doing things because other people have these expectations that I should be a certain way, for example. And what I have found is that it really comes back to peeling away some layers and looking at, where did that story start? What is the source of that? Who or what authority figure maybe in life early on did I need to feel the need to please them, so that I could feel loved or accepted? There was some trade-off that was probably happening at some point, right? And when there's a secondary gain in people pleasing, then it becomes subconscious. We do it because we at one time received something in exchange for doing that, and maybe didn't really understand when we were younger that that was compromising our integrity, or that we were maybe not being in our full power. Today, we have the capacity to be able to look at people pleasing and see that it can not only harm me, it can harm other people when I'm people pleasing. If I'm standing in the way of, if I do something out of obligation, for example, so that I appear to be one way to someone, then I'm not being myself, I'm not being authentic, and the other person doesn't get to know me either, not really. Um, so I think staying true to ourselves it's a journey of discovery. And I think that's what this transformation piece is all about. It is about being able to arrive at looking at all of the ways that we think, that we behave, that we act, that we believe to be true for us, and be able to question them. Is this something that's serving me, or is this keeping me back, or keeping me stuck in a pattern that I don't really want to be doing this anymore?
And those are big questions. Those are such big questions. And I think it kind of, not to like stick around people pleasing, but it is something that, again, I remember the first time I was working with a life coach and they had asked me what I wanted. And I remember looking at them like wanting to ask them what they wanted. I was like, wait a minute. I don't believe I'm allowed to do that. So, and it turned into, like you said, it at some point at a young age, there was an experience where me giving and giving to the means of what this person wanted gave me, in quote, love, right? So I was like, oh, I'm only going to get love if I keep everyone around me happy without even considering what, am I happy? And that's, just something wild, like in this very fast-paced society, this trying to keep up with everything society, especially for women. They're super women out there, mothers, workaholics, corporate babes, therapists, everybody is just really outsourcing themselves. And the moment they give themselves like that tiny bit of and
Mhm.
someone asks them what they want, then they have to fight with this narrative of like, I feel guilty, or that I am allowed to tell you I need something or I want something.
Right, which is really it's critical to understand that we can, not only do we have the power to ask for what we want, but I believe I've come to understand that it's almost my responsibility to put myself in that position instead of expecting other people to guess what I need, or not speaking my needs at all. That doesn't create connection, and it doesn't create relationship, and it doesn't work in relationship if I'm not willing to show up fully and say, this is what I have to offer and this is what I need. That's a reciprocal ingredient, I think, in relationship.
Oh, that's a really good point. And I think, again, I think a lot of people, it's so odd to even think that like you said, saying it is very, speaking it out loud and saying what you want is very powerful because, at the end of the day, they don't know, they're not mind readers. They can't read what your thought process is. Meanwhile, I'm spiraling because I'm feeling unworthy or unseen, but you don't know that.
No, it's a whole narrative. It's a whole story that we get caught up in. And, when we're not being true to ourselves because we're too busy pleasing other people, we've stepped away from ourselves. We've abandoned ourselves. We're not in touch with who we really are and the magnificence and the glory of our own spirit and our own brilliance and what we're here to do. And so, and when you get a glimmer of that, when you can get a whiff of, oh, wow, I'm this light in the world. I'm here and I have a purpose, and I'm beginning to see, that I'm not just this one thing that this person needs me to be for them, but rather I'm beautiful and a light just as I am, just as you are. You are magnificent and brilliant and a light in the world, just as you are. And you don't need to receive the source of that from outside of yourself. It's really an inside job.
Mm. Oh my goodness. So sweet. I was like, she's talking to me. She's talking to everyone listening. Um, and when you said that, I was thinking, especially in like in this media, very fast-paced age where a lot of folks are seeking that validation, that acceptance, and that love from likes, comments, swiping right, and the dating age. How would how can we create this relationship? How can we create or remember our power, our purpose? And, when you were saying all those beautiful affirmations, things that we want to believe, but we still haven't gotten to that point yet, and we're still relying on that outside of ourselves. What do you recommend?
That's a very good question and a really valid question in this day and age because there's a lot of distractions out there. And there are many different ways for us to give our attention away. Our attention is one of our most valuable gifts. And where we place our attention largely creates the reality that we live in. In other words, if we are looking outside of ourselves for the answers, we're not going to trust ourselves fully to find the answers within. Or if we're relying upon social media to feed us or nourish us in some way, it's artificial and it's ephemeral and it's going to fade. It isn't going to last. So I think creating connection is really important. Connection with self, connection with spirit, connection with others. I think all of those connections are important to understand that we're not alone. Because I think a lot of that social media has a tendency to create this separation from us, like the haves and the have-nots, and you need to be more this, or you need to be, thinner, or you need to be more beautiful, or you need to have more money, or whatever the enticement might be, the allure. I think it's created in a way to draw us away from who we already are. And so I think again, I would come back to at least working with my clients, I want them to come back home. I want them to come back into themselves. This is the journey that I've taken too. And honestly, I've raised four kids of my own, and I encourage them to do the same, is to not go looking for the answers outside of yourself, but to give yourself the grace to pause, to reflect, to think about what is it that I really want, and if I don't know what I want right away, that's okay. I don't have to know right off the bat, but I do want to have a direction, a sense of direction. Where am I headed with this? And what's my skill set? What do I know how to do? And what do I think might be important for me to have if I sense that I'm lacking in some area? And I think working with a life coach can help you find some of those missing pieces to kind of help bring those out. And again, they're within the person. It's just a matter of helping them rediscover themselves.
No, I think you said some, again, really big questions. And I would encourage people listening to go back, re-listen to those questions again, jot them down, and then give yourself that space to do some reflection. And in the show notes, I will have some resources from Amy, including her links and podcast. But remember those questions. And also, I think you said another big thing, especially in a very digital, fast-paced world, hitting pause. And something I would love to get into the practice of, being that I am on my phone a lot. And that's putting it on do not disturb. And that's what my Sundays look like. And I think it's really important for us to take that moment. Like even before we recorded, I sat and did some movements and some yoga and my own personal meditating, because when I feel like I'm in a rut or stuck or kind of icky, I'm like, oh, I gotta move, but move in a way that I need to.
Yeah,
I think
that's
that's just from the journey of, because I could also say, well, I need to work more, obviously, because I have to make more money, obviously. It's like, but that doesn't feel good for me right now. Like, actually, would prefer to go for a walk right now.
great. I love what you're saying because what you are describing is you are embodying what is important to you in a given moment, and you're listening to your body to do that. So, our bodies are conductors and they allow us to understand our emotions. Oftentimes, they're a gateway and a bridge to deepen our understanding of what might lie subconscious within us. And so I think, doing sitting, doing yoga, going for a walk, these are ways in which our body knows naturally, very naturally, to take care of us. And when we listen to those, we are affirming and we are validating the experiences that our body already knows how to take care of us. And we're just tapping into the wisdom of the body and saying yes to it. So I think that's beautiful what you did before the podcast.
Well, thank you. And I do think what you just said in tapping into our bodies, that actually can be a very resourceful tool when it comes to making these life choices, whether you're moving or you're changing relationships or you're entering into one. It's important to really, I think now more than ever, to really like ask yourself these questions too, like really look into yourself, going back to those values. And again, like, we've heard it, you've probably heard it before, but like the body doesn't lie. The heart's not gonna lie either. And I think a lot more people would be leading with more purpose and fulfillment if they did ask themselves those questions, if they did lead more naturally with their heart. And as a coach, I'm sure that you've probably seen that a lot with your clients.
I do, 100%. Yes. In fact, my own podcast is called Into the Heart for that very reason. It's about finding wisdom within, and we all have the capacity to do that. If we just remember, to quiet the noise outside of ourselves and take the time to really get to know ourselves.
I have one more question before we kind of wrap up, but I love the way like you talk about love because I love to talk about love. But love, is one of those things where it is all around, but it's also like it starts with the heart, right? So what are your own favorite ways to tap into that? Or what are some ways that we can, tap into more of our heart source because of like what we're exposed to, whether it's because of media or just I live in DC, so a lot of people are like working. There's 5 to 9s, 9 to 5s, and then 5 to 9s. It's crazy how people just are constantly pushing. And like, I guess like just to say it again, what would you say are the best ways to tap into your heart?
Mhm. That's a beautiful question. And I'm sure that there are many ways to do this. I believe that one of my favorite ways to do this is honestly to close my eyes, to connect to my breath, to find the rhythm of my breath, and to create a connection with my heart through my breath. And I call it a heart breath, actually, through the front of my heart and through the back of my heart, and to become aware of the center of our being. And when we can still ourselves in that space, something very special happens. It's a very sacred, calm place. So for some, it may be find a guided meditation. I have a guided meditation coming out on my website soon. That's a heart meditation for this specific purpose, to tap inward. The other thing that I will say, breath is very powerful and very cleansing, and it can be very helpful to breathe into any source of discomfort also in our body, and to connect with the discomfort and ask a lot of questions. What are you here? Why are you here? What messages might the discomfort, disease have for me? What is this really related to? And then instead of using our minds to find the answer, just put your hands on your heart and just let your heart sort of whisper. When we get really, really, really quiet, we can hear the whispers of our heart.
Mhm. It's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And if people wanted to get more resources and connect with you more, what do you have available for folks to tap in a little bit more?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. Folks can find me. I'm a transpersonal life coach, and my business is called pathways to purpose coaching.com. So I have a website. I also have a podcast called Into the Heart, Finding Wisdom Within, where I have a lot of tools actually that people can tap into. And there's conversations around all of what I'm discussing with you here today as well. And people can email me at amy@pathways-to-purpose-coaching.com, or you can also find me on my handle on Instagram at Pathways to Purpose Life Coach.
Beautiful. Amy, this was such a wonderful conversation. And I know everyone listening, I don't know about you guys, but I feel such relief from talking with you. And I know I do believe that no matter where we are, there's always some kind of life transition, whether it's entering a new relationship or you're moving or you're experiencing the end of something or even a job change. Like there's just so many different types out there, small, big, anything in between. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your beautiful soulfulness. And I look forward to continuing this connection.
Thank you, Victoria. Me as well. Thank you so much. It was beautiful.
And thank you everyone for listening to this Love and Lattes episode. I hope you found some very resourceful information here with Amy today, and I will have her links and resources in the show notes. So always remember, you can reach out and that we see you and we love you. Have the best day, and we'll see you in the next episode.